Hello, and welcome back to episode 123 of the Guardian Project podcast. I'm your host, Andy, and after last week's episode, I played against some decks that we hadn't seen played this past year. Jaleva and Edgar specifically, those can now be Markov'd my list.
Oh, I like it. Very nice. It's good that you got to it right away.
Right off the bat.
And I'm your other host, Mike, and I built an Obosh companion deck for a stream that I had this past weekend with Falthus and Jessica as partners. And let me tell you, that is quite the odd combo.
Please listen carefully.
It was very odd indeed. And this is the podcast where we talk about all things Magic the Gathering,
but mostly Commander.
So we had a few things happen this past week. This last week was the third annual MTG Content Creator Awards, and we were honored to be nominated for the best MTG podcast with a small audience. We want to thank all of our listeners who nominated us. That category was taken by the lovely MTG Color of Magic. Great show. They actually hosted the entire award ceremony.
Yeah, and they did a great job hosting it.
It was a lot of fun. We will have a link to the actual video. It's on YouTube. You can go and watch it. It's like literally just over an hour. So that'll be in the show notes below.
Yeah, very cool. It features a lot of content creators that you might not know about, and then you can follow them and find out some things that they do.
It was magic around the world, I believe was the theme. So all the content creators, they were all over. We had some in the US. They were people in France, we had people in Brazil. It was all over. It was really cool.
Very cool. We also had a secret Lair announcement, the October Super Drop. There is a ton of cards in here, so we're just gonna kind of quickly go through all the different drops that are part of the Super Drop. There is a secret Lair Stranger Things Super Drop featuring 9 brand new cards, one of them a token. We have the Mirrored Insanity featuring the Mirrored In artifact lands and some really cool art. Monster Anatomy 101 featuring some creatures and some specific like biology stuff in the artwork.
Yes,
really
the Gisheth has strong arms, and in its belly is an unlucky vampire.
An Ixalan vampire for sure.
An Ixalan vampire. A monster movie marathon. They are some cool cards with like movie poster themes.
Yeah, very, very
cool. A Read the Fine Print, which is really one of the coolest flavor wise, which is a Liliana and her demons that were part of her contract.
Yeah, very cool to see all these. This one actually is available in etched foil as well, which is kind of cool compared to our normal secret Lairs. We have Showcase Midnight Hunt for lands. So these lands that famously, according to our podcast, enter the battlefield untapped. Utility lands such as Moorland Haunt and Vault of the Archangel, printed in some black and white Midnight Hunt theme.
Yeah, the Eternal Night frames. And then we've got Thrilling Tales of the Undead, which includes cards like Rise of the Dark Realms and Gravecrawler. I'm very excited. If you don't have a Rise of the Dark Realms, you can get it there.
Gravecrawler in a prom dress, which is fantastic. I love it. And then you can also pick these up as non-foil bundles, foil bundles, and then both the foil and non-foil bundle. And so those are on sale. So go and pick your cards up today.
On sale now.
Or buy them today.
Buy them. Yeah, pre-order today. They're on sale through November. Get them.
Eventually.
Yeah, sometime in the spring, probably.
Yeah.
And then we also have a new patron this week. Thank you so much to Dylan Wood for joining our Patreon.
Yes, your part of the project is going to be copying the project in triplicate so that we can turn it in for 3 different classes.
Oh, we're going to reuse it, recycle. I always liked when our professors would say, if you've done something similar, just tweak it.
Yeah, maybe bind it.
Well, okay, no. So I did go to a school, digressing here, where all of our text went through a program where they looked to see if it had already been done. And it does count your previous assignments.
Sure.
And I know that at least we had one professor that told us how much, I'm using quote unquote, plagiarism needed to be identified before it flagged it, I guess.
Right.
And it's 3 words consecutively that have to appear in a sentence for it to count. So if you said like the Ford Motor Company, you have 4 words and it would always flag it. So if you're writing a project on Ford, you're going to get more flags than anything else. So they said, you need to paraphrase your own previous project if you would like to reuse it, though.
I would like to just quote my entire previous project with a bibliography of my previous project.
You're going to put a quote at the front and at the end, at the start of the title, and at the very end of your works cited page. The whole thing. Yeah, if it's inside quotes, I know it does not count. So I might not read any of your paper. Bad idea. Bad idea. So thank you so much, Dylan, for joining our Patreon. And if you are listening and you want to support us, you can head to patreon.com/Guardian Project Pod and donate for any dollar amount.
And if you're looking for another way to support the podcast, whatever platform you are enjoying the podcast on now, if you could subscribe, rate, review, and leave comments, we would be most appreciative.
And you can find us online at theguardianprojectpodcast.com. You can find our social media on Twitter at GuardianPod, our gameplay videos at youtube.com/theguardianproject, and you can email us at guardianprojectpod@gmail.com. Coyle, what is on the agenda this week?
This week, we have another Patron deck tech, this time coming from @CubeDraft. We are going to review his Queen Marchesa deck. And let me tell you, there's quite the conspiracy behind this one.
I think it's time for us to snatch the crown. We are talking about the Queen Marchesa.
Yes.
This is a really
Marchesa
strong
the Black
deck.
Rose.
Not Marchesa the Black Rose. We are talking specifically about the Mardu Marchesa that cares about the monarch and making some assassins. Why don't you go ahead and start us out with the intro that our favorite Steve gave to us.
Absolutely.
CubeDraft.
Yes. So CubeDraft brought this message with his deck. It's multiplayer nonsense. The only stipulation I used when building this deck was to use spells that have been printed in Conspiracy and Conspiracy Take the Crown. The lands required some leeway, as neither Conspiracy sets had mana fixing, but I limited myself to mostly common and uncommon enters the battlefield tap lands and a smattering of lands that have been printed in Commander and Battle Bond products, and maybe Commander Legends products. Who knows? It is the deck I have the most fun bringing to any table, and the Conspiracy sets were multiplayer focused, so a lot of the spells really play into politics of the board state, just as the Queen intended.
So since this deck is made up of cards only from Conspiracy sets, which is Conspiracy and Conspiracy Take the Crown, we thought it might be good to actually just go over those mechanics that those sets brought to the table. So starting with Conspiracy, we had 3 mechanics: Will of the Council, Parlay, and Dethrone. So Will of the Council, it really allows for an effect of the card to be dedicated to or decided by popular vote. So you can vote and whichever card received the most vote, right? Like a target permanent, it gets exiled. Parlay has each player reveal the top card of their library and then draw that card with an additional effect for the player who used the Parlay card that scales based on the number of non-land cards revealed that way. And then Dethrone, which says, you put a +1/+1 counter on creatures when they attack, as long as you're attacking the player with the highest life total.
Yes. And then Conspiracy Take the Crown brought the keywords, one of our favorite keywords ever for Commander, Monarch.
Thank you.
Monarch
Conspiracy
is a designation that a player may have during the game, granting them the ability at the beginning of your end step, draw a card, and whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, its controller becomes the Monarch. We have Melee, a keyword that gives a creature +1/+1 when it attacks until end of turn for each opponent you attacked with a creature of this combat. Goad, a keyword that forces creatures to attack a player other than you if able. And Council's Dilemma. Council's Dilemma is another way that we're going to vote, but in this case, the outcome is going to be based on how many of each vote went each way, not just the majority. So, each vote for, expropriate is a card that always comes to mind. Obviously that's blue. It's not going to be in this deck, but you vote for time or you vote for money. And for every time vote, the person gets a permanent for every time vote, the person gets a turn. For every money vote, the person gets a permanent.
Always vote money, but when I cast it, please always vote time.
Yeah, I would like to take 4 turns in a row. That would be
I would really love that. Yeah.
I don't need your permanent.
I would love that for you too.
Yeah, it'd be great.
As long as I'm not in the game.
So these are the keywords that are going to be focused on. Obviously, there's going to be some cards outside of these keywords that are going to be in this deck, and we are going to go over those too. But we need to start with the Queen herself. So Queen Marchesa is a 4-mana commander in the Mardu colors for 1, a red and a white and a black. She's a 3/3 human assassin, not a noble, despite being a queen. And I did look it up on Scryfall and Gatherer just to make sure it didn't get updated to become a noble.
She stole this crown.
Yes, she deserves. I was about to say she doesn't deserve it, but she deserves it. So she has Death Touch, Haste, and 2 abilities. And enter the battlefield effects that allows you to become the monarch. And then another effect that says at your upkeep, if an opponent is the monarch, put a 1/1 black assassin creature token with Death Touch and Haste onto the battlefield. These tokens are pretty much meant to get the monarch back for you. So having a commander that introduces the monarch to the game and then has ways of keeping or getting back the monarch is going to make sure that a lot of different people are going to be drawing more cards. So it's kind of got a group hug aspect to it, just introducing the monarch to the game. Outside of the commander, the deck features 9 other ways to introduce the monarch mechanic to the game, oftentimes granting added effects and abilities like Queen Marchesa's ability to create these assassin tokens. We're not going to go over every single one of these cards that introduces the monarch, because some of them honestly just enter the battlefield and say you become the monarch. But there are some cards like Custody Lich. It's a 5-mana zombie cleric. So for 3 black, you get a 4/2 zombie cleric. This is when it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. And whenever you become the monarch, target player sacrifices a creature. So you get an edict effect every single time you become the monarch, not just when Custody Lich enters the battlefield, but when Custody Lich enters the battlefield, you're probably going to become the monarch and get to do that trigger.
I do like this as target player sacrifices. So if someone is playing light on creatures, they're going to likely receive this each time. And I do remember we played a game on stream once where I had you sacrifice your creature like 4 times.
Oh yeah.
And I did feel bad, I think, like the 3rd time. I didn't feel bad the 4th time.
It was a pre-con game. It was okay.
But it was. But you were the only person that was really going to be able to take off if I didn't remove it. So I think this effect is really, really strong. We also have cards like Knights of the Black Rose. It is a 4/4 human knight for 3, a white and a black, that says when Knights of the Black Rose enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. And whenever an opponent becomes the monarch, if you were the monarch at the beginning of this turn, that player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So small amounts of incremental life loss and drain and gain here, as long as you were the monarch, which in a lot of cases, no one wants to block when you swing with the Death Touch assassin. So you just usually just take it back, unless you're playing some little tokens or something. No, I'll keep this.
Right. And you keep getting it back. And the nice thing about Knights of the Black Rose is if you have ways of becoming the monarch on other people's turn too, or at the end of people's turn and stuff, then you can constantly be pinging people for 2 if people want to keep trying to take the monarch from you. Really, really like that card. Palace Jailer is our next card. For 4 mana, 2 white, you get a 2/2 human soldier. It says when Palace Jailer enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. And when Palace Jailer enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls until an opponent becomes the monarch. So this is a fiend hunter, but only for when you're the monarch or something like that. I mean, there's a bunch of creatures that do it.
Monarch Hunter.
Yeah.
That would be a good TV show. The Monarch Hunter.
The Kingslayer.
The Kingslayer. I do want to mention
is the Kingslayer.
Is Palace Jailer.
Oh, there you go.
Exactly. I do want to mention one of these cards here that I like. They actually put this mechanic on a land. So Throne of the High City. So it's a land that taps for 1 colorless mana, or you can pay 4 and tap it and sacrifice it to become the monarch. It just introduces it on a land.
Absolutely.
And that you can do at instant speed.
And it's a colorless land that fits in any color identity deck. So you can always introduce the monarch to any deck.
And if you're playing a deck that needs a land that produces colorless for an ability like I don't know, an Eldrazi that needs colorless to activate some ability, Throne of the High City. Can I interest you in the monarch?
Comes in untapped and taps for a colorless.
There's no downside. No downside.
Now, I really like this next card, and Andy, I know you're going to have nightmares when we start talking about this.
I still think about this.
This is Protector of the Crown. This is a 6 mana, 5 and a white for a 2/5 giant soldier. It says when Protector of the Crown enters the battlefield, you become the monarch, and all damage that would be dealt to you is dealt to Protector of the Crown instead. This card might seem like, oh, you get to save yourself from one combat or whatever. But if you have a Kenrith, the Returned King, as your commander, and you can just constantly reanimate your Protector of the Crown, it becomes very obnoxious. You're not going to be able to do that in your Queen Marchesa deck. You're going to be able to save yourself on one really big swing, though. It's gonna be
exactly.
Cool.
And depending on what we get in the future, maybe there's cards added to this deck. We could see something that gives creatures indestructible.
Sure. Or something like every time you become the Monarch, you can reanimate a creature or something, and then you can bring it back. That'd be cool.
We also have Skyline Despot. It is a dragon for 5 red that says when it enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. It has flying, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you are the Monarch, you get a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying to, just help protecting your throne.
Yes, the dragons are for protection only.
No swings. They don't swing. They definitely don't. They are only blockers. No, this could get out of hand depending on how late the game goes.
The problem is if you let the Skyline Despot get like one upkeep of a dragon, now they have 2 flyers, one to block, one to swing with, and now they're going to be able to keep or regain the Monarch all the time. It's a really good card.
And then sometimes we'll get 3 and 4. Can you imagine?
I can't.
4 dragons.
I can't imagine 4 dragons. It's like I'm playing a Scion of the Ur-Dragon deck or something. Okay, so those are all the main ways that we're going to be interacting with the Monarch, but there's also some ways to keep the Monarch. So very similar to Protector of the Crown that's going to prevent damage that's dealt to us. We have some other ways to prevent damage being dealt to us, and so we can keep the Monarch. So the number one way here is Ghostly Prison. It's been reprinted 8 different times, but Conspiracy was one of the places it was printed in 2. It's a 3 mana enchantment for 2 and a white that says creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 generic mana for each creature they control that's attacking you. In this deck, you're going to have blockers. Some of your blockers are going to have Death Touch. Yes, your opponents are going to have mana to get a couple swings through, but you're going to have enough blockers to block this. Amazing Pillow Fort card. It's a shame that Propaganda isn't available to play in this deck too, in the blue colors.
Well, we are Mardu here, even if it was available.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be sad that you couldn't play it.
But yeah, these Pillow Fort effects are going to help you keep the Monarch. Pariah is another card that was printed in Conspiracy Take the Crown that I very much enjoy in my my Brash Taunter deck that I really like. So Pariah is a 3 mana aura, 2 and a white, says enchant creature. All damage that would be dealt to you is dealt to the enchanted creature instead. So again, you can, feign one big swing this way by pariahing just a creature that's going to end up dying, kind of the definition of pariah. But if you can throw pariah on an indestructible creature, then you pretty much prevent damage being dealt to you for the rest of the game, perhaps, or until the creature is removed. So very cool there.
We also have goat effects that can keep certain creatures from being able to attack you if they're large. There's lots of creatures that have flying that sometimes you just need to make sure that they don't get to you, or creatures that are unblockable that might be able to steal the crown from you. So cards like Abyss Smirch or Grenzo Havoc Razor are actually very useful. And although this is just a Conspiracy block commander deck, these are wonderful in a lot of decks that can play red. So Besmirch is a sorcery for 1 red that says until end of turn, gain control of target creature. It gains haste, untap, and then goad that creature. So until your next turn, that creature attacks each combat and attacks someone other than you if able. And then Grenzo Havoc Razor is a goblin rogue. It's a 2/2 for red that says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, choose one. You either goad target creature that player controls, so it has to attack each turn and not you, or you can exile the top card of that player's library. Until end of turn, you may cast that card and spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it. So that's useful here because we are in the Mardu colors. We are specifically working with a Conspiracy set, but this will allow us to potentially play cards that are outside of our set too.
Yeah, really good card advantage. I think people should be playing more copies of Besmirch. This is my first time actually reading the card Besmirch, and I know the steal your creature cards are typically all 3 mana red cards with one little added extra effect. The creature's going to get +1/+0, or the creature's going to gain first strike, or you're going to make a treasure token or something, and this goads the creature. So not only are you going to get to swing with your opponent's creature, but that creature's not going to be able to swing at you next turn. You don't have to sacrifice it if you're playing a steal and sacrifice deck or something. So I really like the card Besmirch, and I just wanted to put a little bit of a spotlight on that before we moved away from it. Yeah.
So the easiest way, though, aside from goading creatures to keep the crown, is perhaps just removing creatures, even if they try. Yeah. So I'm going to play some, but I would like you to lose them. And there's a lot of good removal in these
There's
sets.
a ton of really good removal.
We've got cards like Fleshbag Marauder, Mortify, Rout, Subterranean Tremors. Very, very cool cards.
Mhm.
Swords to Plowshares, Hallowed Burial. So I play these in quite a few decks. I'll start with Fleshbag Marauder. It's a 3/1 zombie warrior for 2 and a black that says when it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. Most of the time, I just sacrifice my Fleshbag Marauder.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time you're going to be doing that. Maybe you have a 1/1 token or something that you can sacrifice instead. But then if it's not in your graveyard, you can't get it back and do it again. So yeah, you got to sacrifice that Fleshbag Marauder. I really like this Hallowed Burial, 3 white sorcery that put all creatures on the bottom of their owner's library. So it's not, you're not destroying all the creatures or exiling all the creatures. It's a way to get around indestructible creatures and stuff like that.
Yeah, I like Subterranean Tremors. So for X and a red, you've got a sorcery that says it deals X damage to each creature without flying. If X is 4 or greater, destroy all artifacts. If X is 8 or greater, you also create an 8/8 red lizard creature token.
Have you made that lizard before?
I've made the lizard one time in my Torbrand deck, and I regretted it because I wiped my board.
Oh, you wiped your own board.
I wiped my own board because it's creatures without flying. So in most cases, Subterranean Tremors, I usually cast it for X is 3 because Torbrand's toughness is 4. So, but I got to do it. I got to say that I created the token.
You made the token.
I made the 8/8 lizard that I don't own.
I really like the board wipe route here. 3 white, you get a sorcery to destroy all creatures and they can't be regenerated, but you can, for 2 generic more, cast it at flash speed. 7 mana to destroy all creatures at instant speed sounds kind of similar to a Cyclonic Rift that everyone seems to be raving about all the time.
Raving about or ranting about?
Yeah, one of the two probably is true.
We've got 2 spells here at 1 mana. We have Wild Slash and Swords to Plowshare. Swords, solid, 1 red or one white mana, exile target creature, its controller gains life equal to its power. And then Wild Slash, that we are limited to
Flame Slash.
I'm sorry. Flame Slash, we are limited to the conspiracy set. So for 1 red mana, it's a sorcery speed spell that deals 4 damage to target creature. 4 is usually enough.
Yeah. Now, if you want to talk about like a conspiracy specific removal spell, let me introduce you to an enchantment called Deadly Designs. For 1 and a black, you get this enchantment that has an activated ability of pay 2 generic mana to put a plot counter on Deadly Designs. Any player may activate this ability. Whenever there are 5 or more plot counters on Deadly Designs, sacrifice it. If you do, destroy up to 2 target creatures. So this is the whole, anyone can pay into it. Let me make a deal with the person who has this enchantment to destroy creatures that aren't mine by paying the 10 mana or whatever you need to do in order to get it up to the correct number of plot counters.
This is one of those cards that I've never seen this card played. I didn't know this card existed until we did this deck tech.
Yeah.
I didn't play any of the conspiracy drafts. I think the most popular conspiracy cards that I know of are Queen Marchesa, maybe cards like Expropriate or Selvala, Explorer Returned. But this is pretty cool to play politically.
For sure. And one card I didn't know was in Conspiracy that I used to play in a lot of my mono black decks was Avatar of Woe. 6 black avatar, or 6 black for an avatar 6/5 that says if there are 10 or more creature cards total in all graveyards, the spell costs 6 less to cast. So it's only black. It's got fear and you can tap it to destroy target creature and it can't be regenerated. So just, 1 removal per turn, which is kind of nice. So outside of removal, outside of the Monarch, I should say, there is another big mechanic supported in this deck, and that's voting. So voting was introduced in Conspiracy with Will of the Council, and Conspiracy Take the Crown brought Council's Dilemma. We do see both of these keywords in this deck. And luckily for us, since voting was supported in both sets, they did print a creature that allows us to have an extra vote in both sets with different names, which is really great for our singleton format. So first up, we have Ballot Broker. For 2 and a white, you get a 2/3 human advisor that says while voting, you may vote an additional time. And we have Brago's Representative. For 2 and a white, you get a 1/4 human advisor that says while voting, you get an additional vote.
I love that.
Extra voting.
It's an
really
extra
good.
vote. This is like Survivor. And if you get an extra vote, I mean, you're way ahead.
Oh yeah.
1 extra vote doesn't seem like much, but if there's only a few people left in the game, like maybe it's down to 2 people, you just win.
Oh yeah, you get to choose whatever you want. And that's actually why some voting cards like Council's Judgment was even used in things like Legacy, because you can remove whatever you want. Council's Judgment being a 3-mana sorcery, 1 white that has Will of the Council. Starting with you, each player votes for a non-land permanent you don't control. Exile each permanent with the most votes or tied for most votes. So yeah, if you're going to have extra votes, you can pick 2 different things. That way, 2 things get exiled. If it's all tied, you can make sure the vote is tied and say everything gets exiled that got voted for. So
yeah, I like this card, Bite of the Black Rose. It's a sorcery for 3 and a black. Will of the Council. Starting with you, each player votes for sickness or psychosis. If sickness gets more votes, creatures your opponents control get -2/-2 until end of turn. If psychosis gets more votes, or the vote is tied, each opponent discards 2 cards. So that token players sweating bullets during this vote. And depending on where they are in the vote, that's the part that gets rough. Every time that I see a vote card, there's a full conversation. But then if you're 3rd or 4th in line, I want to be 3rd in line.
I want to be last.
I don't want to be last. Well, sometimes last puts you in a position where you're really choosing who you want to receive the benefit.
That's what I want.
When you're 3rd, you're the inconspicuous person that goes, actually, I'm going to vote for psychosis.
See,
and then it's not my problem. Then it's Coyle's problem. Well, Coyle shouldn't have voted that way.
Well, that's fine. I want someone else to cast a spell and I get to choose how it resolves. That would be my favorite thing. Now, the one card in this set that actually is using the keyword Council's Dilemma is Capital Punishment. Capital Punishment for 4 black. You get a sorcery. Council's Dilemma. Starting with you, each player votes for death or taxes. Each opponent sacrifices a creature for each death vote and discards a card for each taxes vote. So with extra votes, now you're talking about making people sacrifice extra creatures or discard extra cards automatically.
I don't like either. I don't want to. I abstain.
That's too bad.
I'm going to filibuster this.
You're taxed.
We also have Custody Squire. It is a 3/3 flying spirit cleric for 4 and a white with Will of the Council. When Custody Squire enters the battlefield, starting with you, each player votes for an artifact, creature, or an enchantment card in your graveyard. Return each card with the most votes or tied for the most votes to your hand. Yeah. We got some reanimate here.
Absolutely.
Pseudo.
Yeah, it'll work.
I like it.
It'll probably work. I like mentioning Council Guardian, because a lot of time when people talk about Will of the Council, they think it's going to be a choice between A and B. And with Council Guardian, you get a 6-mana 5/5 giant soldier that says when Council Guardian enters the battlefield, starting with you, each player votes for blue, black, red, or green. So you have 4 choices. And Council Guardian gains protection from each color with the most votes or tied for most votes. So hopefully you have a diverse pod where everyone picks a different color, and then you get to just pick the 4th color, and it'll just have protection from everything but white. And it'll be fantastic.
Yeah. Magister of Worth is a 4/4 angel of flying for 4 white and a black with Will of the Council. When it enters, starting with you, each player votes for grace or condemnation. If grace gets more votes, each player returns a creature from their graveyard to the battlefield. If condemnation gets more votes, destroy all creatures other than Magister of Worth.
Oh yeah. Board wipe or reanimation.
Have you seen this card cast in Commander?
I have.
You have. I have not. I don't see voting cards other than Expropriate very often. That certainly says something about the power level of the pods that I'm playing with.
Sure.
But this is cool.
There was a Esper Dakin Blackblade deck that I played against at Command Fest Chicago that was an all voting deck. And that's where I saw Magister of Worth get played. So it was a unique deck that I saw it. But the last card that I want to talk about here is actually the cheapest voting card for only 2 mana. You get Tyrant's Choice for 1 and a black, a sorcery with Will of the Council. Starting with you, each player votes for death or torture. If death gets more votes, each opponent sacrifices a creature. If torture gets more votes or the vote is tied, each opponent loses 4 life. 2 mana to do 4 life worth of damage to 3 different people. 12 damage for 2 mana. Sounds pretty good.
That's not nothing.
That's not nothing.
That's not nothing. Now, we only have 1 card in the deck with Parlay, and that is Rousing of Souls. So Rousing of Souls is a sorcery for 2 and a white that has Parlay. Each player reveals the top card of their library. For each non-land card revealed this way, you put a 1/1 white spirit creature token of flying onto the battlefield. Then each player draws those cards they revealed. I like Parlay. I'm sad we don't see it more in this deck.
Yeah.
But it's very cool. It's just, it replaces itself, right? This sorcery replaces itself, and potentially you made up to 4 creatures.
Yeah, and they're flying spirits that are going to help you keep the monarch or get the monarch back.
Keep that crown. Go get that crown.
Yeah. So it's a fantastic choice for your one parlay card that's in this deck. Absolutely.
And then the way to close out the games really is with some good old fashioned beaters using Dethrone and Melee.
Yeah, there's a few creatures in here. Adriana, Captain of the Guard, a 5 mana, 3 red white, 4/4 human knight with melee. So whenever this creature attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each opponent you attacked with a creature this combat. But it also grants your other creatures melee, meaning that if you swing one creature at each one of your opponents, all of your creatures are going to be getting +2/+2. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've seen Adrian do some work. Or Adriana, I'm sorry, not Adrian. I've seen Adriana do some work. I don't see melee very often. I see a lot of the time, I think it's because someone wants to attack just a single opponent and there's not always good swings against all 3 opponents.
Right.
Usually there's like 2 that you'll swing favorably at.
Sure.
But if you've got those flying spirits, that,
I just think I think Saskia the Unyielding overshadows the keyword melee a lot. Just being able to pick one person and then that person takes combat damage whenever somebody else takes combat damage, whenever you deal combat damage to someone else. So it's just maybe it's just an overshadowed keyword by some better cards. But I know that there are some cards that are going to help that effect, like you mentioned, hitting everyone. So Grenzo's Ruffians, 2 red. You get a 2/2 goblin with melee. This is whenever Grenzo's Ruffians deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent. So that's actually like a Kethis effect from Commander Legends, being able to hit everyone by only attacking one person. There's also Enraged Revolutionary and Grenzo's Cutthroat. These are pretty much vanilla creatures with Dethrone. So Enraged Revolutionary is a 3 mana creature, 2/1 human warrior with Dethrone, and Grenzo's Cutthroat is a 2 mana 1/1 with First Strike and Dethrone.
And the last creature we have in this category is Deputized Protester. So it's a 2/1 human warrior for 2 and a red. It has Menace. It cannot be blocked except by 2 or more creatures, and it has melee. So whenever it attacks, it gets +1/+1 for each creature or each opponent that you attacked with the creature during this combat. So
it's nice to have that menace evasion on that. Make sure this creature stays alive so you can keep getting that melee trigger every single turn.
Yeah. So we also have some other notables for this deck. We do have some card advantage. Why don't you walk us through our card advantage?
Sure. So there's not a lot of things that helps you ramp in this deck per se. So Steve Cube Draft takes advantage of things like swamp cycling and basic land cycling on cards like Twisted Abomination. Twisted Abomination is a 6 mana, 5 and a black, 5/3 zombie mutant where you can pay a black to regenerate Twisted Abomination, but has the aforementioned ability swamp cycling for 2 generic mana. You can discard the card and search your library for a swamp, reveal it, and put it into your hand, helping with your mana fixing.
Yeah, we have some where we're trying some mana fixing here. Card advantage, a card that is creeping up there in price. Funny enough, Phyrexian Arena. So it's an enchantment for 1 black that says at the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card and lose a life. We've got some ways to gain life. We've seen it. So this you could completely negate with giving away the crown and taking the crown back with our creatures.
How do you feel about Phyrexian Arena?
I do play it, and I have it in a deck tech that I just created. It's a slower card.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that. But I've noticed that if I get it out on turn 3, most of my games, I would say I'm getting to 7, 8, 9 lands, not necessarily including ramp.
Mm-hmm.
But if I can get at least 3 draws off of it, I'd play a card that says pay 3, lose 3, or draw 3, lose 3 life, which is what this essentially would be. Anything over 3, in my opinion, it's just gravy.
That's fair.
So I want 3 upkeeps.
I guess I just don't like the fact that it takes 3 turns for that to happen. But I understand.
Pay now. It's like a loan.
I like the 2.
No, it's not a loan. What is it? Pay now, receive the benefit. No, that's really bad. You should receive the benefit now and pay over time.
Exactly.
This is pay now, receive later, but it could exponentially.
This is you won the lottery and you took the pay me once a month or whatever option.
I think that's the worst option though in the lottery. I think what you're supposed to do, because you'll die before you ever
take
receive
the lump
that,
sum.
Take your lump sum.
Yeah. Just make sure you save enough money to pay your taxes.
That sounded really morbid, but
It's true, though. You're not going to live forever. Sorry. Unlike the next card on our list, Kaya Ghost Assassin, who might be able to live forever. I don't know. Who knows? She'll get old one day. Kaya Ghost Assassin is a 4-mana planeswalker. So 2 white and a black. You get a planeswalker Kaya that enters the battlefield with 5 loyalty counters. Has 3 different abilities. For 0, you can exile Kaya Ghost Assassin or up to 1 target creature. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of your next upkeep. You lose 2 life. So this is oftentimes used to reset Kaya's ability to go back to 5 loyalty, because you'll see her next 2 abilities are minus, but you can also use this to remove your opponent's tokens, which is pretty cool. You can -1 Kaya, so each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life, which is your fallback ability if there's nothing else to do on the board. And there is a -2 where each opponent discards a card and you draw a card. So you have card draw here in your planeswalker, and then you can protect it by blinking it, which is pretty nice.
We make a lot of tokens.
Mhm.
We make tokens that have death touch, tokens that have flying,
Mhm.
giant dragon tokens. If you can land Kaya Ghost Assassin and -2 twice and then 0 to reset Kaya, you could really do a lot. I have not seen this Kaya perform very often, and I usually don't see this Kaya played. And I wonder if it's because it's not had. I actually think it might have only been printed once, and I think this is its only printing. It's unseemingly powerful, but I think it does a lot. It does a lot as long as you get to activate it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I think this card is, like most planeswalkers, much better in smaller amounts of player formats, such as a 1v1 format. I know there was a long-winded way of saying that, but I think Kaya benefits with having less players, but you can say that about most.
Play that Kaya late game, you'll get more benefit.
Oh,
take out
sure.
your opponents earlier. I was trying to make a joke there about taking out the people trying to steal the crown, but it didn't come to me.
You can kill the ones trying to commit regicide.
Close the castles, pull up the bridge.
Yeah, close the drawbridge.
Crashing drawbridge is not from this set, but if we had it, I would crash the drawbridge.
You want to uncrash the drawbridge.
Pull up the drawbridge.
Yes, pull up the bridge.
Uncrash it. We also have Horn of Greed. Horn of Greed is an artifact for 3 mana. Whenever a player plays a land, they may draw a card. This is wonderful. It also makes your opponents feel like you're their friend.
Yeah, you get a little bit of group hug. If someone's playing a landfall deck and if this card is in your hand, you pitch it into the graveyard immediately. You never play it. You never play this against a landfall deck. Don't do it.
Don't. But Harvester of Souls, though, I would play against any deck.
Yeah.
It is a 5/5 demon for 4 black that has death touch, and whenever another non-token creature dies, that's any, you may draw a card.
Yes. Very cool that it is both your creatures and your opponent's creatures.
It is non-token, and we are making quite a few tokens, but it's okay.
I think if it didn't care about if it was a token or not, it could only be your opponent's creatures, because otherwise it's too easy to abuse, I think.
Coyle would like to play a grave crawler with like an Ashnod's altar and just have another zombie.
Yes.
I would like to draw my deck, please. I would like to draw my deck.
I mean, who wouldn't want to draw their deck? Drawing cards is the best part of Magic. Everyone keeps telling me. Speaking of which, what feels sometimes like card draw, but it's not, is a card called Ill-Gotten Gains. So Ill-Gotten Gains is a sorcery for 4 mana, 2 black that says exile Ill-Gotten Gains. Each player discards his or her hand, then returns up to 3 cards from his or her graveyard to his or her hand. So as long as your hand is less than 3 cards, it's card advantage for sure, because you're going up to 3, and chances are everyone else is going down to 3.
I didn't really think about that card like this, but that's true. But you also have to have cards in your graveyard that you want back.
Probably the same cards you've been casting the whole game, I hope.
Yeah.
But now your opponents are also going to be able to get whatever cards they want back. The nice part is you actually get to see exactly what cards everyone puts back in their hand, so nothing is a surprise anymore.
No. And we also have 2 other forms of mana fixing in the deck in Gleam of Resistance and Absorb This. Not absorb this. Absorb this.
Yes.
So absorb this is 6 and a black for a source that says target player loses 4 life and you gain 4 life. I don't know if you would ever cast that, but it has basic land cycling of 1 and a black. So I'm probably always going to basic land cycle this. And then Gleam of Resistance is 4 and a white. It's an instant that gives creatures you control +1/+2 until end of turn. You untap them. So that is little tricksy combat there, especially with Death Touch Assassins.
Mm-hmm.
But it also has basic land cycling for 1 and a white. You can discard it and search your library for a basic land, put it into your hand. So we do have some fixing, although without having many duels, there weren't a ton of lands that are going to do that for us in Conspiracy.
Right. So
we have to draw these.
Yes, you have to draw the lands. Spectral Searchlight being the only mana rock is a 3 mana artifact that says tap it, choose a player. That player adds 1 mana of any color they choose. So at least it adds a color of mana. You can use it as group hug to help other people add mana, but you're probably going to want it for yourself. And you're going to run 39 lands. So, most people talk about anywhere between 34 to 37 lands to start out. So this is a little bit higher on the scale because there is only 1 rock. There's no dorks either. So
there's no dorks.
No dorks, 1 rock. That's our next podcast name. No dorks, 1 rock.
There's definitely no dorks on this show.
Only 1 rock.
Do you own rock? I have rocks in my garden.
I've got rocks, yeah. No, my girlfriend
the show
owns
rocks.
a lot of rocks.
A lot of rocks.
She collects some rocks. Pretty rocks, colorful rocks.
So we also have some creatures here that didn't necessarily fit into any of the categories as we were creating this agenda. So we wanted to go through some of those. One, notably, a very cool commander card, Grenzo Dungeon Warden for X and then black and red. You get a 2/2 Goblin Rogue. It enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. You can pay 2 and put the bottom card of your library into your graveyard. If it's a creature card with power less than or equal to Grenzo's power, just put it on the battlefield.
Yeah. Most people have to build around this card, but this is just going to be
it is cool to see, though, when you roll the dice and it does end up being something that's important that makes you the monarch.
Oh, yeah.
Nailed it.
It's very cool when that happens.
So when Grenzo says, crushed it.
Does Grenzo say that?
Grenzo would definitely say crushed it.
He'd say crushed it. And it's talking about his hunched over back is really what got crushed.
Oh, that poor Goblin Rogue. We also have now the cutest little rat here, Sinuous Vermin. For 1 and a black, you get a 2/2 rat horror that has monstrosity 3. So you can pay 3 black, and if it's not monstrous yet, you put 3 +1/+1 counters on it, and it becomes monstrous. As long as Sinuous Vermin is monstrous, it has menace. So you have a little cute little rat that becomes a big fat rat that has to be blocked by 2 creatures.
And it probably will get blocked by 2 creatures. I really like the card Custody Soulbinders here. We talked about Monarch getting it back, keeping it, and having flying creatures be a good way to do that. And Custody Soulbinders is going to be a fantastic way to produce those flyers. So for 3 and a white, you get a Human Cleric 0/0. It says when Custody Soulbinders enters the battlefield, it enters with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of other creatures on the battlefield. And you can pay 2 and a white to remove a +1/+1 counter from Custody Soulbinders to create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. So hopefully this will be able to create an army of flying tokens for you.
Yeah, I like Sangromancer here. 2 black for a 3/3 flying vampire shaman. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you can gain 3 life. Whenever an opponent discards a card, you may also gain 3 life. We've mentioned discard a card a few times here.
Discard. We mentioned give all your opponent's creatures -2/-2. There was like 13 removal spells in this deck. It's well supported, making your opponents put stuff in their graveyards.
I think Sangromancer will definitely see that life gain a few times if you can get it out.
Absolutely. And it's going to be important because we're going to have Phyrexian Arena out on turn 3 for the entire game. We have to get all
we
that
can
life
draw
back.
we can draw all those cards and gain so much life.
Yes. Now, one card that was recently it was a box topper, I believe, for Time Spiral Remastered. Sanctum Prelate.
Buy a box?
Was it a buy a box promo?
It was a buy a box. It wasn't in the box.
Not a box topper. You're right. Buy a box promo. Sanctum Prelate, 3 mana, 2/2, 1 white. You get 2/2 Human Cleric. This is a Sanctum Prelate enters the battlefield. Choose a number. Non-creature spells when converted mana cost equal to the chosen number can't be cast. So, you sit down against a CEDH deck and you just name 1. And then they can't cast their Demonic Consultation anymore and you're good to go. That's probably not what you're going to do with Sanctum Prelate. I don't know what you're going to do with Sanctum Prelate in, honestly, like a more casual power pod. It seems more of like a modern style card to play when you know what your opponent's going to play and prevent them from doing it.
Someone at the table is playing blue and they played Telepathy. So everybody's playing with their hands revealed. So you see it coming and you play it,
Mhm.
naming something that's important.
Now, that's rude.
See, we went real deep there.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, reading this card, it does say non-creature. So if you are playing against someone who has a planeswalker as commander, you can name the converted mana cost of their planeswalker and basically Nevermore their commander this way.
Oh,
Yeah.
So Sanctum Prelate is just Nevermore.
Nevermore for planeswalker commanders only.
But at all times it is that though. So we can always argue it is always
It's
a
always
version of Nevermore. It's always sometimes Nevermore. We also have Liliana Spectre, a 2/1 with flying for 1 black. When it enters, each opponent discards a card. So we have another discard here.
Yeah, tons of those little things exist everywhere. And the last creature we have on here, one that I had never even heard of before, and I probably will only see it in this deck, honestly, and that is Carnage Gladiator. Carnage Gladiator is a 4/2 skeleton warrior for 2, a black and a red that says whenever a creature blocks, that creature's controller loses 1 life. And then for 1, a black and a red, you can regenerate Carnage Gladiator. So if your opponents are playing a walls deck that's going to just keep blocking everything, sure, Carnage Gladiator seems like a fantastic option.
But also, this is period whenever a creature blocks. So if your
if you
opponents are
block-
swinging at each other,
Oh, I guess
you're just like, go to town.
it does. De-incentivize. I still don't know if that's a word. I think I've used it on the podcast. De-incentivize.
Disincentivize.
You yourself from blocking with your death touch creatures, which kind of is a little bit of a drawback, but maybe the advantage is better than the drawback.
We have enough life gain in here. We don't care.
That could be true.
Sangromancer.
As long as Sangromancer turn 4, Phyrexian Arena turn 3, now we're good to go. We're gonna nothing but gas the whole game because we're never drawing a mana rock.
Exactly. So looking at the mana base, we do have one very, very good land in here in Reflecting Pool.
Mhm.
So tap to add 1 mana of any color that a land you control could produce.
Yes.
So once you get out a Nomad Outpost, also great card that was added to this because it is in the Mardu colors.
Mhm.
Most of the lands that were not from Conspiracy that were added were all tap lands. That taps for red, a white, or a black. Your Reflecting Pool is just good to go.
Oh, yeah. Notably, Reflecting Pool was printed in Conspiracy.
It was.
It's beautiful in the original Conspiracy set, and I opened like 5 of them, and I loved it.
So we have the Scry lands, the temples. So Temple of Triumph, Temple of Silence, and Temple of Malice. So they enter the battlefield. They allow you to scry 1 and they tap for 2 different colors.
Yep. Mentioned battle bond lands like Luxury Suite that enter the battlefield untapped as long as you control 2 or more opponents. You control 2 or more, but as long as
you control 2 or more opponents.
If you can control their turns, I mean, that's possible. Mindslaver 1, Emrakul the other. I control 2 opponents.
So now your card better do a lot.
No,
when
it just makes the land enter untapped. That's it.
No. Evolving Wilds, cards that check for lands when they enter the battlefield. So Clifftop Retreat, when it enters the battlefield, it enters tapped unless you control a mountain or a plains.
I like these budget. I use these more in budget 5 color decks. The Vivid cycle, Vivid Crag, Vivid Marsh, and Vivid Meadow, which each can tap for either a red, black, or white, but also come in with 2 charge counters. They do enter the battlefield tap, but you can remove those charge counters to tap for a mana of any color. So definitely a really great budget mana fixing option there.
Right. So at the end of these episodes, we like to talk about possible upgrades. But for this, an upgrade only comes with another conspiracy set.
It's a conspiracy. You can't upgrade this deck.
So Watsy, if you're listening, we need another conspiracy set so Cube Draft can update.
That's right.
With future options.
Well, maybe Queen Marchesa will be in a different combination of colors this next time outside of black and red.
Maybe we'll get conspiracy cards that will function in Commander.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there were some cards, right, that you would have to write down secret things and you reveal it. That feels very conspiracy-y.
Sure. And we do that with Wheel of Misfortune right now. There's some cards where you have to write down some things secretly.
Something secret. You keep your secret. You keep your secrets.
Keep your secrets. Are you quoting Lord of the Rings or are you quoting the meme about Lord of the Rings?
probably the meme about Lord of the Rings, because I will admit it here. I've watched the first Lord of the Rings film, portions of the second film. I never saw the third film.
Fun fact, that quote is from the first film.
Oh.
That's all right, Gandalf. You keep your secrets.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey, it all makes sense. This was like Star Wars when I watched it for the first time when I would think I was 25.
Okay.
I did not watch it as a child growing up. The reference to these are not the droids you are looking for finally made sense.
Wow.
These are not the insert generic comment. Like these are not the candles you're looking for. These are not the assign whatever it was. None of that made sense to me until I watched that movie.
Yeah,
go,
that was.
Oh my gosh, this makes so much sense.
That was going on your entire life. That reference, literally.
It came out before I was brought onto this planet.
Yeah.
And I did not know what it meant until I was in my 20s.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
You're my only hope. Luke, I am your father. That I understood, though.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
I had seen that clip.
You saw the clip, or you saw like an animation of it from like funnyjunk.com or something.
It was, I'm sure,
the Star Wars rap,
something like that, or wherever that website was where you would go and watch that video about well, then take a nap and fire as I miss house. What was that?
I would go on Newgrounds for something like that, but I don't know if you were a Newgrounds kid.
We're aging ourselves here.
Yeah,
we're very young on this podcast.
We used to watch videos on Adobe Flash Player and play Flash games on Adobe Flash Player. I guess everything was on Adobe Flash Player.
Everything was Adobe Flash Player,
which is not supported anymore. They have better things now.
It moved to Java, then it moved to just good stuff. Yeah. Well, Steve, thank you so much for submitting this deck list. This was a lot of fun to put together. And thank you so much for your support. We hope to do one of these in the future for all of our listeners.
Yeah, they're really fun to do.
They are really fun to do, and we definitely have more lined up. So if you are interested in having your deck featured on our show, you can check that out on Patreon. And let's give a little spoiler for next week.
What's next week, Andy?
What's next week? We are coming up to our 1-year anniversary on one of our favorite episodes we've ever done, which is the Halloween candy episode. And this year we are doing it again with candies we've never tried before. And then we're going to determine, one, whether or not they're good. And we're not going to, we might, you're not
going to agree with us. You're not.
Some of them might. There are some candies here that we're like, I'm not sure I want to try this, but we're going to rate whether or not we would pass it out at Halloween.
Okay.
And then, and we're going to compare it to which commander we think that it is most comparable to.
So it's going to be an interesting thing on whether or not we would pass it out. Cause it's like, there's a threshold. Cause if it's so good that I don't want to pass it out because I want to keep it for myself, or if it's so bad that I wouldn't wish this on the worst person.
I have physically been at Mike's house on Halloween.
Yeah.
When you gave away a Reese's peanut butter cup and a Kit Kat. So I know you will give away the good stuff.
You also know that I bought 2 bags, one to hand out, one for the freezer.
No. It was 1 for the children, 2 for us in the living room.
That's true.
But the bowl you had was giant. So we're going to talk next week's all candy. I'm very excited. So we're going to have lots of photos leading up to our next episode.
It's going to be pretty sweet.
Maybe lots of... Yes. Well, we want to thank you all for listening this week. If you want to contact us, you can find me directly on Twitter at Andy Flory.
Oh,
I have changed it. It is no longer at AT Flory because people thought that it was at Flory. So it was funny. Someone, when I was talking about changing this on Twitter, they said, now instead of calling you at Flory, if you just changed it to Flory, you could be at Flory, but it really should have been at Flory.
Right.
But now it's just Andy Flory. Makes sense. That's now my name on Twitch as well.
See, now I'm thinking that if you actually enjoyed Star Wars, being at Flory would be amazing. To be an AT Flory.
That's good. If this was a Star Wars podcast, that would in fact be my Twitter handle. But it's not.
No, you're right.
Until we have Secret Lair Star Wars.
Which It'll come.
I'll change my name. I'll change my display name on Twitter to ATATFlory.
Okay.
That's a good one.
All right, we'll hold you to that. And if you want to find me on Twitter, I am at WormCoilEngine. And of course, we want to give a special thanks to Ryan Nichols, our producer and editor. Thank you so much for everything that you do. We appreciate it. And to Chris Wolf, who handles all of our graphic design. Thank you so much for everything you do. We appreciate it. And to all you listeners out there, we appreciate you. We love you. Thank you for everything that you do for us. And we'll talk to you next week.